Where do you really excel? What do you have to offer? And I don't completely understand it, but I do marvel at it. That because I have something unique to contribute, it's just the way the world works, that somebody's going to cross my path who needs exactly what I have. And somebody's going to cross your path this year who needs exactly what you have. Now, you can call that the law of probabilities, you can call it chance, you can call it providence. I don't care. But you have something unique to contribute. You are your own greatest asset. Don't be ignorant about it. And don't be indifferent to where you excel. How many of you remember playing Pac-Man growing up? Yeah, on the Atari 2600, right? I remember as a 9-year-old boy, that was it was a defining moment in my life to move Pac-Man around. Well, Pac-Man recently turned 30 years old. Some of you show it. And very recently, a young man by the name of Billy Mitchell, even though Pac-Man just turned 30, Billy Mitchell played the first perfect game of Pac-Man ever. He completed all 256 levels. He ate every dot, every blue goat, every fruit. The ultimate high score of 3,333,360. And Billy Mitchell's cat was really proud of him. Now, why don't we build a statue to Billy Mitchell? Why don't we erect a statue in his honor? Why don't we put a plaque on his front door proclaiming his house as a historic landmark? Because it just doesn't matter. It's just a game. Listen, what you do this year doesn't matter. It's not a game. And you have assets in your life. You are your greatest asset. And you have something to contribute to make a difference. Now, I have to put the disclaimer on the other half of that statement. Not only are you your greatest asset, but you are also your greatest obstacle. Now, here's where you're probably expecting another cheesy talk about the importance of having a right attitude, right? I have bad attitudes when people tell me to have the right attitude. And listen, we all struggle with bad attitudes at times, don't we? I love history. That's my favorite subject. Who in here is a history teacher? All right. I love you guys. Love history. And my favorite historical figure is Winston Churchill. And Winston Churchill was notorious for having a bad attitude. There's a lady on staff named Lady Nancy Astor, and they did not like each other. And one day she told him, she said, "Winston, if you were my husband, I would poison your coffee." And he said, "Madam, if you were my wife, I would drink it." I told you that one, I might as well tell you one other. They were at a party late one night, and Winston had too many scotch on the rocks, and Lady Nancy Astor came up to him and said, "Winston, you are a drunk." And he said, "And madam, you are ugly." The only difference is tomorrow I shall be sober. You see, I can't tell that from the church, so I have to tell it. We all suffer from a bad attitude, and the really bad advice that we often get is have the right attitude and it will begin to lead to the right actions. I'm going to tell you just the opposite today. Because if I waited to work out when I felt like it, I would never get on the track. But if I do what I know I'm supposed to do, if I get out on the track, by the time I do about the first quarter of a mile, I feel like running. And it's the right action that leads to the right attitude. And so if I could encourage you to adopt one action in your life this fall that will lead to the right attitude, it would be that of service. To say, I am here to serve. Because once you start serving, once you get your hands dirty, you will start feeling like you want to serve. We live in an old house. We live in an old house, and as such, it requires a lot of maintenance. So we have a friend, Mr. Jim, who comes over quite a bit and helps us put up drywall and paint and trim things out. And you know that smell of construction when you're working on something? It's just a very unique smell. So whenever Mr. Jim is over there, that smell of construction just fills up our house. Well, not long ago, I was working on a project in one of our And my 9-year-old son comes in, he smells the sheetrock and the paint, and he says, "Dad, it smells like Mr. Jim. Is Mr. Jim here?" He'd associated that smell with my friend. Kids have a very keen sense of smell. And they're going to know when they step into your classroom whether you want to serve or be served. So, just some reminders. Kids will be your greatest challenge. It will also be your greatest reward. You are going to be your own best asset, but you can also be your own greatest obstacle. I give you one more reminder. Experience your first love again. Your first love being two things. Now I know by definition a first love is supposed to be exclusive, right? But I'm in charge, so I can do what I want to right now. Ignite your first love again in two areas. Your students and your subject. And even if you're an administrator, even if you work in the halls, if you're on the maintenance staff, you teach something by your lifestyle. And I would ask you a very blunt question as we come to the beginning of another school year, and maybe you've grown a little bit internally. Which first love do you need to fall in love with again? It could be your students. I have a question. And the background of this question is you need to understand we've been in a drought in Tulsa all year long. My question is this: why are there large swaths of brown dead grass in my yard and little sprigs of green grass growing in the cracks in the driveway? Everyone has their first question they're going to ask when they get to heaven. That's mine. I think if I can get the answer to that, so many other things are going to fall into place. Now, I'm sure someone who understands lawn maintenance can give me a more scientific answer, but my layman's answer to it is this. Where you have to struggle, that's where you find real life. Where you're hanging on by a clod of dirt and one root, that's life. And I know, from what I understand of your school district, there's a lot of kids who are hanging on by one root and a few specks of dirt. And they are hanging on for dear life. Have compassion on them. Maybe you don't need to fall in love with students again. Maybe you're already there. But maybe you need to fall in love with your subject matter again. What you teach, what you are giving away, what you are instructing. Listen, I'm a pastor. And I can do a reality check every Monday morning to say, you know what, I have a desire that people would understand something very simple, that Jesus didn't come to make people more religious, he came to make people more alive. And if I don't have that passion, I'm done for. Because I've discovered that the only difference between a rut and a grave is the death. And if I get in a rut, I'm already dead. So, maybe you've grown a little bit today. Because it's already past August 1st. And there are a lot of big challenges that your school district faces. You've got 4,000 students that will step in and out of the halls of your school. You have 75 to 80% who are on free and reduced lunch. That is an economic indicator of an educational reality that you're not going to change immediately. But I want to reframe it and ask you to think about it in these terms. As of today, you start with something every other school district in the world has. You start with teachers. You are your greatest asset. You can also be your greatest obstacle. You start with students. They're going to be your greatest challenge, as well as your greatest reward. But maybe you have something other school districts don't. And that is hope. Hope that things can change. I'm going to go back to Winston Churchill one more time. I carry a coin around in my pocket. It is a 1965 British crown. I carry this with me everywhere I go. I've given each of my kids one of these as a reminder because we've talked about this before. Now, I'm also a coin collector, and this coin is not particularly valuable. It's worth about $1.50. But this British crown represents a first in minting coins on the British Isles. And realize they've been minting coins in Britain all the way back to the 2nd century AD when the Romans were there. This is a first, because in every coin that's ever been minted on the British Isles, it's always had a picture of royalty. It had to be royalty to show up on a coin. Well, in 1965, they pulled first, because 1965 was the year that Winston Churchill died. And so on the front, you'll see Queen Elizabeth, as you'd expect. But then on the back, you'll see the portrait and the name of Winston Churchill. I carry this around as a very simple reminder that when an ordinary person meets what seems to be impossible odds, and I think you would agree that World War II for England seemed like impossible odds. When an ordinary person meets impossible odds, that's the formula for greatness. That's the formula for success. All the best to you this new school year. Thank you.
You know,